Hey Leon, how you doing?
I'm fine. I'm great. So tell everyone about what this is all about.
Okay, so we're starting the inaugural show of the Ed Files, the new podcast. We've been spending all of half term organising it, if not before, and we've been thinking about all the different shows that we're going to do, and we've been planning and plotting and contacting people. It's been great, and
Maybe you'd like to say a bit about yourself, and then I'll say a bit about myself.
absolutely. So I'm Alex Weatherall, Weatherall on Twitter. I'm a physics teacher based up in Yorkshire, and I am basically obviously got far too much time on my hands because I thought doing a podcast would be a good idea with you. I can't even remember how long ago it was that you suggested it. I think it's only 2 weeks ago, actually, isn't it, Liam?
It was the beginning of October.
Was it? So it's been a month, has this? This has been a month of plotting. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm just moved schools, just starting new school in September, and been enjoying teaching GCSE physics, the new GCSE, and just having a nice half term as well. Planning this with you and getting ready to go back to school in 2 days' time.
So I am a consultant. I've been an educational consultant for 17 years now.
Oh no, not a consultant, Leon.
Yeah, not a consultant, but I did teach for 23 years, and in the last couple of years I have been teaching computing to children as a STEM ambassador, so I do have my hand in. And basically we thought this would be a bit of fun to do. I think we're trying to aim it at the full spectrum, from the ordinary teacher who can have something to listen to while they're marking to keep them up to speed on what's happening. Even more masochistic. Right the way up to the policy wonk who wants to know what people's reflections are on government policy and all that. But really, I'm really excited.
I love that adjective. Sorry to interrupt. The policy wonk. That's brilliant. It's great. Or is it a noun?
I don't know.
I don't know. Is a wonk a descriptive term?
It's a descriptive noun of someone who's a bit of a geek. Within
you carry on. I'm going to interrupt. That's my forte, Leon. So if I do interrupt you in mid-flow, it's because I'm being very rude.
You have to curb that, because in the actual playback of the thing, it's hard to edit when you cross over the streams. So, I mean, the idea is to get agency to teachers and to get them thinking about different things. And we're going to have a lot of content in the show. Basically, we'll have news and reviews which we'll talk about, but we've actually employed, we've spent money on teacher reviewers who are going to review teaching books, which I think is very exciting.
Yeah, and there's other reviews out there. There's reviews that get done that are written. I've done a few myself for newspapers and so on. But I think it's quite nice to have this discussion. The idea that you can have a discussion about the book and talk about it in person with somebody, and someone can do an audio review. Allows us, I think, to just have a little bit of a chat about it and talk about it in a little bit more detail, a bit more relaxed. And I think it's just another way of getting that sort of information out to people. I also think we talked about this before, that we probably go down the line in a few episodes' time of maybe setting homework for people and getting them to read books along with us, if you like, or before we review them, so that they know what we've been reading and they can engage with the podcast in that way.
Yeah, and basically I'd like people to use the Anchor app on the phone, where they can actually lift their phone to their ear and just talk about any sort of feedback they wanted to give, or ideas or views on the program. It's very easy to do. Just get the Anchor app on your phone, and we'll issue it through Twitter and other social media things. But also we're going to have some interviews with people. I'm going to go out in the field and interview quite high profile people.
Our roving reporter.
sort of roving reporter thing, which I might actually do some videos for as extra content too. And I have got 4 microphones set up, which I'm prepared to take out and about around the country and get people come and have a discussion. It's like, if Mohammed won't come to the mountain, if people won't sort of come to us and give us views, I can go out and get reviews from
Brilliant.
other people. So
Brilliant.
we can add that into the show.
So it's a case of lining those up and getting people involved there.
And also invite people in through Skype or indeed through this, which we're talking on at the moment, which is Slack. For their views and have a guest on the show, which would be brilliant. And I think that would be a good idea to add them to the Ed Files Slack.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It sounds like a good idea. I think we're kind of getting away with ourselves a little bit. I think this first show, I don't know whether or not we want to talk about at some point the way we've organised ourselves a little bit. It's quite interesting in itself, I think. So we've already mentioned Slack. You've mentioned using Anchor FM as an app to use, and we've also been using Workflowy a lot. So whether or not we talk about that over the course of this episode, or we maybe discuss a little bit more in a bit more detail at a later point. I think it's worthwhile letting people know how we're organising our lives whilst doing this, because I think there'll be some top tips for people working in a team and organise themselves for their schoolwork as well using some of these apps. So
yeah, I think Slack is an amazing app. I mean, before using it, I had it, but I haven't used it in sort of anger before. And now it's here. I mean, I've just found it so easy. Workflowy is a revelation to me. I've used Outliners, Outliners for years. I sent you some stuff about Dave Viner, and he did the original podcast RSS, and he designed also sort of the Outliners sort of idea. And Workflowy is the ultimate outliner. It's free, and you're able to put as many sort of ideas and sub-ideas in the outline as you want, and it's excellent for organising stuff.
Yeah, I've used it for about 3 years now myself, and this podcast project is just one of my sub lists in my Workflowy setup. It's really useful as well because you can set up multiple accounts. So you can set up an account for school and then share it with your normal list, and that way you can kind of keep things siloed if you want to work that way. If you're concerned about information in your school account being in your personal one, I don't know. I certainly would never use it for putting private stuff, data protection stuff up, information about kids or anything like that in school. I don't think it's appropriate for that necessarily, but I use it all the time for my timetables, for my planning, and so on.
Yeah, for meta organising.
Absolutely, yeah. But I was reading the other day, and I'm going to start and try it out. Someone who actually uses it to write their PhD thesis using Workflowy and writing LaTeX code directly into Workflowy, and basically copy and pasting at the end. They use it for their editing, and paste it into the LaTeX compiler, and out comes a PDF ready for publication. It's quite incredible, really.
Yeah,
it's a powerful tool.
That's quite geeky, LaTeX, or I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if you pronounce it that way, but
yeah, I do pronounce it that way.
But I also use Omni Outliner, which is a commercial version of more or less the same thing, where you can create as many as you want. But you can also cut and paste them straight into Workflowy, because obviously it's an outliner and it has the sort of same underlying, basic code that will go in there. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, sorry, we've gone a bit nerdy there, haven't we?
What I'd like to talk about this week, and I think we should have this every week, is some of the things we've come across that have been quite interesting. And I really do want to sort of reach out to talk to people about things that affect them. And one of the big things that does affect people is workload and CPD. And one of the people I came across this week she's called @MaternityCPD, CPD being capital letters, and her name is Emma Shepherd. And
Yeah, I saw your tweets about this. Yeah.
yeah, and she started up a website called mtpt.org.uk, and that's paternityteacher.org.uk. And there's a hashtag, it's hashtag MTPT project. And basically, she's looking at the sort of people being able to do things when they're on maternity leave or do CPD while they're on maternity leave. And she actually saw the fact that I had live streamed Research Ed. And so she was able to sit at home and sort of with the baby crying and, vomiting all over and all that kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah, we've had that tonight.
Yes.
Carry on.
So it's of immediate concern to people who are in the same situation, but she could take part in the conference because she could actually see it.
Brilliant.
And of course, they had the first meeting, and I talked to her about streaming. She said, "Well, how do you stream?" So I went along and helped, and she set up a streaming from her phone, which you can do. And I plugged a mic in, and they had a 2-hour session, and we streamed it on Periscope.
What were they using? Periscope?
Periscope. There was a problem in that there were inappropriate comments that came up during the stream, so I closed it down. I closed it down, and I then went back to Periscope and said, "Well, why can't you see the comments first and then kick them out before they come up?" And they said, "Well, you have to do it the other way." But never mind about that. We managed to overcome that hurdle and push the stream out, and all the comments were sort of taken off. And about 200 and 300 people have seen that stream so far.
Brilliant.
And basically, she's since written on her website a whole blog post about the creche at Research Ed, and interview with Tom about why
Tom
Bennett about why it was so good to have that creche there, because it enabled people to actually take part in the whole thing.
Yeah, as you know, I'm quite involved in Research Ed, and I can't remember, I don't think we did it for the very first conference. I seem to remember someone querying whether or not we could do it, and from then on, every single national conference we've done, Tom's organised a creche. It's really important. It allows, I see people use it, the same people even use it every year or every time we have one, and it's brilliant because you can tell that they're comfortable with the idea. They can come to, whether it's a male or a female, they can, or mum or a dad even, probably more appropriate term. They can come to the conference, secure in the knowledge that their children are being looked after, and they are looked after. I've dropped into the creche a couple of times just to see what's going on. There's face painting, there's all sorts of stuff. They're treated really well over the course of the day, and the parents basically can go do the conference and enjoy the conference and the CPD and bring their kids along, and childcare is not a problem. And the Saturday issue, which people have always queried with regard to Research Ed and other conferences, the Saturday issue it doesn't go away because it's still your own time, but it just makes that element, that childcare element, disappear, doesn't it? You can bring the kids along, and okay, it's not a kid-friendly conference. It's the kids aren't going to the sessions, but they're being looked after whilst you're there, and we always make sure we have a break within the session, so you can pop up for 5 minutes and check they're all right. So I'm really pleased that she's pleased that it's a positive step and sees it as such.
And her sort of way of going about things is really to get several partners in, and I think there's a lot of younger teachers coming in, either from Teach First or from other areas, who are quite entrepreneurial, who like to set up projects like this where they pull in multi-partnerships. So the Teacher Development Network was in there, so they've got clout in terms of being able to push down through certain other agencies, and you begin to join up the dots. It's no longer just one person saying, "Isn't this a good idea?" It becomes a strategic thing that as I said, I wrote a blog post about this. It can come from left field and start to change things.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's really important. one of the fears, I think, of taking maternity or paternity leave is that feeling that you're potentially out of the loop, and whilst you're out of the loop in the school, you don't necessarily. It could be the perfect time for you to engage in some CPD in your own time, at your own pace, at your own leisure, and actually give you that thinking time to be able to plan your next steps and so on.
And also,
sorry to interrupt, Leon. I was just going to say, I think it's really important that we say this. All these things that we've been talking about so far in the podcast, we are going to put in the show notes underneath the MP3. So all the links we've been talking about, Workflowy, Slack, and obviously, what was it?
ntpt.org.uk.
Yeah, those links and the links to your blog post that you're just referring to will be in the show notes. So we'll make sure that all those things are there, so you don't feel you need to be frantically writing things down as you're listening to our dulcet tones talking about this.
Yes, I mean, what I did was I also filmed her on my phone and edited it when I was on the tube and sort of pushed it out at the end, and she's got a little sort of promo about what the whole thing is on for people to see. I'd actually written a blog post for her because when she got in contact with me about the streaming, I said, well, the reason why I got into streaming was 22 years ago, I joined the first internet cafe, which was called Siberia, which is in Fitzrovia.
You're so old school.
Yeah. So, but my son was born at the same time. So basically, I was determined not to be out of the loop, and I discovered something called See You See Me, which was a webcam. We've got a webcam. Actually, the person who gave us the webcam and the modem was Lisa Jardine, who was the head of Queen Mary's Uni. And I think her son, I was teaching at the moment, at that particular time, she bought those for us. And we were able to go to Cornell University and see and type messages with the students there and the children there. And we went onto the Global Schoolhouse and it built from there. And the whole thing was very, very difficult to do, but we did it. And I was able to communicate with people at distance. And this is the whole thing about agency. If you have a creche or you have video, live streaming video of something, you're not out of the loop anymore. You're still in the loop and you're able to do things. It's the affordances of that technology that are very precise in this case, allow people to do social things that they wouldn't have been able to do 2 years ago, 3 years ago, unless you were really into it, if you see what I mean. So that's a good thing, I think, because when you meld or join technology that has an affordance like that with a project, then I think you're onto something in terms of being able to create teacher networks or that agency where people can be in charge of their own destiny.
I think you're right, Leon. I think the important thing is that, well, I think this is the case with social media and technology, the internet, the World Wide Web. It's been part of the whole promise of it, hasn't it? It's been an enabler. It's allowed people like you and me to talk to MPs directly, or to head of Ofsted, or anything like that. And the fact that we now have the technology where, as you say, you can stream. I mean, what we're doing today is made so easy. We're doing this over our phones. It's the quality of the audio is hopefully excellent. It's just so easy to do now. We have the technology. We carry them around in our pockets all the time. To be able to do this sort of things, it's incredible, really.
Anyway, let's move on to the next topic, because I wanted to talk about a resource which I've seen, and I got this off Twitter, and I think it's a brilliant resource. Again, it's another way of using technology to have a shortcut. It's by Chris Moyles, who's at Chris Moyles on Twitter, and
it's hang on. No, I have to stop you there. I don't think it can be Chris Moyles, because he's the Radio 1 DJ. I think you mean Chris Moyes.
Oh, I'm just, I'm a bit sort of out of it because I had an operation this morning. and I'm on antibiotics, so it does strange things to old people. Yeah, Chris Moyes. Yeah, there's Moyse, and it's in front of me on the screen, and I'm reading Chris Moyles. Yeah, and it's called Research in 100 Words, and it's
Hang on. I'm just going to look to the show notes and click on it, because this is the power of our setup we've got here. You've put this link here. Wait a minute.
on Workflow.
Just like that. Right, I am looking at the same thing as you're looking at. That's
and so it's called Simple Summaries for Busy Teachers, and it says in the staff room by the photocopier on the back of the toilet door, maybe not. And they're ask questions, check understanding, cognitive load, daily review, pair words with graphics, independent practice. These are all the things that have come out of the psychological stuff and all the sort of research that have come out in the last few years. And they're
bear with me. I'm going to open one up while you're talking.
Yeah, which one are you going to open up?
Retrieval practice.
I've just picked I'll open that up as well. So basically, it's set out in a really nice way. And he's got them all on Dropbox, and it's actually it's eating its own dog food, if you want, in a way. It's showing you a picture, and it's also giving you some very short, pithy information and giving you the research links at the bottom. And so therefore you're getting some input from a visual input, but not the same as the words. And so hopefully that will go in and sort of, you want to know a bit more. It's a bit of a taster so that people can go along, look at it, think about it, reflect on it, and go, yeah, okay.
I'm going to read this out. Leon.
Go on.
So it says retrieval practice. There's this picture of a finger with a knot tied in it, obviously to remember things. It says focus on getting information out rather than just always in. Through the act of retrieval, our memory is strengthened and forgetting is less likely to occur. Retrieval practice is a learning strategy, not an assessment tool designed for improving academics' performance. Encourage retrieval during learning. Oh, don't worry, I won't read it all. To improve children's understanding and retention of classroom material. It does say, this is really important, the more difficult the retrieval practice, the better it is for long-term learning. Excellent. It talks about how you can get maximum effect. I won't read it all, otherwise what's the point in looking at it? I'm just going to zoom in to have a look at the references there. So it's referencing a couple of papers from psychology journals talking about improving student learning with effective learning techniques. So he's referring to research that's been done, recent research as well, 2013 and 2011. So yeah, that's really good. So they're all like this, are they?
Yeah, and they've all got little 100 symbol, and basically you go up to Dropbox, download them, print them out, stick them all over the place.
He's done it in 100 words, I see. So it's just three or so paragraphs, 2 or 3 paragraphs. I'm not going to count the words to see whether they are exactly 100 words.
Well, I think it's 100 posters rather than 100 words. I'm not sure.
It says 100 words on
does it? Oh, right.
Research in 100 words.
So right.
That's cool. I love it. I think that's really good. I can see that going in staff rooms. Absolutely.
And so that's an example of something we want to include each week, is something quick, pithy, you can do. It's not going to be onerous, and it'll get you thinking and reflecting on what you're doing.
And well done to Chris for putting them together.
It's amazing. Yeah, Chris Moyes, that is, not Chris Moyles.
Yeah. Again, the link will be in the show notes, not to Chris Moyles, to Chris Moyes. I'm just looking at his tweet stream because I think his Twitter stream is on the right-hand side. And I think he is... Oh, no, that's not the case. I thought he was looking at one of the things we are going to be talking about in a second as well, which I thought would be quite coincidental. But go on, you carry on with what was next on your list, and then I'll... Yeah,
what was next on my list was a sort of more general thing. Like it was an article in the TES by Jonathan Simons, who is sort of head of policy exchange, and it's
head of education, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and basically it's an interesting article. It's called "Killing the Education for All Bill is all well and good, but what will happen?" But what will happen in LA is where most schools are academized. Yes, I've got a link. I'll drop it into the workflowy later when we've done this. It's too long to do to give you at this particular time.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll look later.
Basically, what's interesting about this is that it seems that Policy Exchange is losing a bit of, let's put this, purchase or leverage, because it seems that he's coming out with stuff because the May government has kind of sidelined them a bit, I think. And it's a kind of Cassandra-ish piece. I'll read out a little bit of it. It says, in many local authorities, this risks a tipping point. This is when, like for instance, as the whole thing works its way through, and that academization, right, it's not going to be the case anymore, but you're going to get a tipping point.
Hang on a minute. We're talking about the dropping of the Education for All bill.
All bill, that's right. Nicky Morgan's proposal to compel all schools to become academies by 2022 has been reversed, and the section of which is still needed, such as laying the groundwork for the implementation of the funding formula, can be swept up in schools that work for all bill.
The green paper, which we will be discussing in a future podcast, I'm sure.
White papers and green papers galore, and all the other initiatives that are coming out. And this is what happens when you don't have an opposition, because people will just go initiative crazy, I think. And
yes, carry on.
And he talks about,
I'm trying to find his blog. Come on.
There's briefing today in the so-called compromise position on academisation. It grants the Secretary of State power to direct mass academy conversion in local areas of underperformance, and that's also being dropped. And he's worried about that particular aspect, because looking at current trends, and I'm paraphrasing now, and because of the financial pressures and everything else, and sponsorship and failing and coasting schools, his estimate is that perhaps 80% of secondary schools and around 25 to 30% of primary schools are likely to become academies by the end of the Parliament anyway, because of that scenario, that arena that's happening. So in many local authorities, that risks a tipping point being reached where the remaining maintained schools, which are mostly primaries, they cannot be effectively supported by that council. Not because of the numbers of schools having left, but because of the numbers of pupils who have taken their per pupil funding with them, coupled with the way in which local authority improvement and central services budgets rely on significant crop subsidy from secondary schools to primaries. So basically, simply, even councils which are currently performing well and are hostile to universal academisation, there's no guarantee of protection from what could happen when a critical mass of their schools renounce their maintained status and the rest suddenly become unsustainable financially and educationally. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Sorry.
What happened there?
My phone just buzzed. I don't know. It's probably Jonathan trying to come in on the chat.
And what he's saying is it could happen really quickly. It's like overnight, bang, and then you'd see a decline, and within a year.
So I'm not reading the piece you're reading. I'm just having a look at what Jonathan's written in the past. Back in March, I think, about his argument for universal academisation.
Yeah. So this is a doomsday scenario, a sort of Cassandra-ish look at what could happen. I think it's a kind of throwing the grappling irons out to say, look, maybe this ain't a good idea after all.
Dumping the bill? You mean?
Yeah, or dumping the bill and having sort of all the other sort of unforeseen circumstances. I suppose these are the known knowns, or the known unknowns, maybe coming into play. And basically, he's going to say, well, the Secretary of State could then jump in and mandate large-scale action to prevent mass failure. But,
So the issue is, I haven't read this, so let me see if I've got this straight. The issue in Jonathan's eyes is that because there will be local authorities who are losing their funding just through, I'll call it natural wastage, but it's not really, it's people moving over. to becoming academies, so that the LA doesn't get the funding anymore. The schools or the MATs get
and the pupils moving,
the funding. Yeah, the pupils moving into
and
an
their
academy,
funding with them. Yeah,
and their funding goes with them. It's not just to do with numbers. It's literally to do with the amount of money that the LA has.
It's dosh.
They would not be able to support the remaining schools. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and he's saying that if you don't have a sort of power of being able to sort of switch quickly, if it doesn't exist, then if you
then
need
you get schools.
It ain't going to be there.
Yeah, you get schools then kind of in a wasteland environment where they maybe be a couple of years where they're not actually getting the support that they need and so on.
And then, of course, communities decay very quickly, and you've got a really bad situation happening there. So it's an unforeseen situation, and there's no backstop, basically. There's no sort of general backstop to say, hold on, let's just flick the switch, which the magic switch, I don't think, even if we had it, would be that easy to do anyway.
So I work in one of the local authorities that has resisted academisation pretty robustly, to be honest. Secondary schools have been very slow in York, in the city of York, and the surrounding areas, to be honest, down in Selby and so on, to become academies. They are doing gradually. Primary schools, again, they're setting up learning groups. They're setting up kind of collegiate groups, but not as academies. They're remaining underneath the LA control, and it's been a rather active choice, I think, in the area. York itself, the city of York's a Labour council, Labour seat. It's kind of red in a sea of blue around North Yorkshire. But even the surrounding areas like Selby and so on, although they're part of Selby and Ainsty, so they've got Conservative MP and so on, they seem to have resisted academisation quite robustly, as I was saying. That's not to say there aren't academies. I work in one in York, and there are a few schools now, secondary schools, that have moved over to becoming academies. As part, I think, in some cases, I can't speak for the school I currently work at, but I think in some cases, due to the bill that was going through, the bill that's now been literally today, I think, or yesterday, chucked out. So it's quite an interesting take from Jonathan there.
Yeah, I mean, because he obviously,
what the impact.
I mean, it's the allied services.
Sorry to interrupt.
It's the allied services that are going to fall down, because as they go, then they're going to sort of fragment and fall apart. And of course, it's those particular services that certain schools have been abusing in the academy structure as well, or the free school structure. That's where the pot of money has always been, are the sort of services for the schools, the allied services, and the revenues that come in from them, and that little ecosystem of funding that goes around. So if you take it away from, it's like taking a top of the blanket and putting it on the bottom of the blanket. It's not going to work. It's got to go
the money's
somewhere.
got to come from somewhere, and the money comes, ultimately, the money for education, whether or not we're paying a company to provide IT services, or you're paying for a company to provide catering, or to provide caretaker work, or anything like that, maintenance work, or I'm trying to think of another thing, but you get the idea. That money comes from the money from the government that's allocated per pupil, and at the end of the day, if that money isn't there, or in that particular pot, it's gone to another pot. It's gone to an academy, or even a multi-academy trust for them, and I think they potentially could share that around as well, and be awarding contracts to companies. It might be the same companies that are providing the LA, but it might not be. And it's going to affect. Well, it has been affecting change over the last
and communities. So
10 years.
So it's like ballast. It's sort of going to tip over the ship, the local authority ship, in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as if people couldn't see this coming, but
No.
but the point is that
Well, that's part of the point of the bill. You could argue there was ideological reasons, and sure many would, and we probably would in certain aspects of it. But at the end of the day, it got to a point where they decided they were going to encourage schools to become academies. They were going to force some schools to become academies, and so the net result was going to be every single school will effectively be an academy, and the LA will become defunct.
Yeah, but that's all changed now, isn't it? Because of Brexit and because of this sudden idea that's come from.
Why's it changed because of Brexit? Tell me your thinking there.
It's kind of
the B word there.
It's kind of pandering towards sort of the popular vote, or as imagined, or as might be inferred by certain people. So, for example, if you're saying, right, we had a small majority on Brexit, so we have to do what the people says. That's fine. Okay, everyone accepts that. But now they're sort of saying everyone likes grammar schools, which they don't.
The G words, the B word and the G word in just a few sentences. Well done there, Leon.
Because this is going to turn around into the policy, really. They're whipping away the academies and thinking about putting in selectives. Maybe not with 11 plus, but maybe at 14 as well, or at sixth form, and putting in a whole host of different kind of pathways. So when you have that, that's fine. But they're not thinking about how it's going to come out, how they're going to instantiate this. As usual, it's politicians going, yeah, there's an idea. Let's do this. That'll please people because it's home. It's looking after your home crowd. But the outcomes might well be unintended consequences where you knock the boat over.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you'll probably have to edit a buzz there. Sorry about that. I don't know what my phone is doing, but there we go. What I was going to say there, Leon, was it's been a rocky couple of months, hasn't it? Since Brexit. I won't talk about Brexit itself, but the change to education and the change to the direction, the structures, and the intention to bring in selection that was announced over the summer has. You're talking about rocking a boat. I mean, I think this is going to be a boat that is going to be very rocking away in very stormy waters.
Yeah, and I always wonder
for a few months.
I always wonder
for a few years, if not.
I wonder about the power structures because Michael Gove brought in policy exchange, and on the one hand, now it seems to be sidelined, or possibly sidelined in terms of its influence directly with government. But at the same time, you have something like Michael Gove coming out and saying, well, actually, I think certain parts of the grammar school system are viable and doable. And basically, it was those, Democrats, Liberal Democrats, who held me back.
It's been quite a week, hasn't it? Because actually, he's rid his happy head again, and been talking up this new policy after, if I'm not mistaken, just a few months ago, saying he definitely disagreed with it. Now, one could argue, perhaps it would be disingenuous of me to suggest that he's maybe angling for a bit more clout back in the cabinet, and sure enough, maybe it's not disingenuous because he's now in charge of pulling together the Brexiteers in government. So it seems to me, or it seems on the outside, I can't say what his motives are, but it seems on the outside that he's changed his mind and is finding his colleagues, the Lib Dems, a handy post at which to blame his lack of enthusiasm for selection, which he's been very vocal about, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
in the past.
I mean, what I'm really interested in. I mean, I'm not sort of going to do Gove bashing and things. I'm actually trying
No.
trying to find
No,
people.
we love Gove on this podcast, don't we?
We are trying to find people who are in favour of grammar schools. I mean, there's a very few in favour of grammar schools, and anyone out there who's in favour of grammar schools, please get in touch with us because we want to hear
use
your
that
opinions.
Anchor.fm. Yeah, absolutely.
And we'd love to have you on the
what
programme because we have got a special on grammar schools coming up.
Yeah, we mustn't spend all our time talking the G word because otherwise we'll run out of material for one in a few weeks' time. But,
anyway, let's talk. We've gone on a bit too long about that, and we are going on a bit at length. So
we're very boring, really. I don't know whether anyone's going to listen to us. To be honest, us wittering along. But speaking of wittering, go on. What were you going to say?
I was saying, you had a couple of topics you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's just a brief one. It's actually related. So we are going to carry on talking about politics for a little while. Just tonight, literally 3 hours ago, maybe a little bit longer, the Education Department, following their dumping of the bill...
Whoops, sorry, I've just released something out of its cage too quickly. Carry on.
What have you released? I've shared a link. Is that this link that I've
if you'd like to go through that again and say what you were going to talk about.
Yeah, I will do. So carrying on from their dumping of the white paper and the bill this week, the Education Twitter account has just posted a video. It's a fascinating video. I think we might be able to play the audio.
Yes,
there's a link. There's a link in our workflowy document. If you want to click on it, you can.
I'll do that now. If you
it looks
quiet.
It looks very flash. I will be quiet. I'll let you play it.
And it's 48 seconds of it, and it's
go for it.
It's a graphic.
You got it.
It's a graphic, and it's sort of embedded in Twitter, in the DFE's Twitter. I'm going to play it now.
A good school remains out of reach for too many children, and the chance of getting the best education depends not on their talent or hard work, but on where they live or how much money their parents have. We want to build a country that works for everyone, and that means providing a good school place for every child, one that caters to their individual talents, abilities, and needs. We want to expand good and popular schools, such as grammar schools, and see more new faith schools. We also want to encourage those with the skills and expertise, for example, independent schools and universities, to do more to help improve schools and create more good school places. We'd really like to know what you think about our plans.
That's a sort of call out to people to tell them what they think about their plans. And they're using the exact argument that it's the rich people, it will sort of raise everyone up by their bootstraps and all this. And this is the thing that was in a heated argument today, or over the last couple of days, on Twitter. If you might like to elaborate on that.
Between let me get his Twitter account right. Jack Marwood, who writes for Icing on the Cake blog, and Peter Hitchens, who is Peter Hitchens. His Twitter account I think is Clark McCarr. I don't know why, but anyway, I've probably missed something flown over my head there. They've been having a little bit of a blogging argument over the last few weeks, months, a couple of months, I think. Since I think Research Ed, since the announcement of the Green Paper. Interesting. So that argument is kicking off within their blogs and kind of impacting a little bit on Twitter. There's a little bit of a discussion about it.
But that very argument is being used by the DFE, and that is kind of softening people up with this kind of little graphic that comes up. Mika Clark is a Conan Doyle.
If only I'd been
adventure
taught properly,
novel,
I'd know that.
British.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So that's
there we go.
1889.
I'll go and read it. Okay.
Courtesy of Wikipedia.
So
might not be right though.
There's also a link in that Twitter. We'll put the link into the show notes, which is the government's engage.number10.gov.uk about good school places. So if you do, as well as responding to us on Anchor, I think it's important to go to that website, because as well as information about their plans, it's also got the link to the consultation document, and that's running through till December. So if you do care about these changes and want to say your piece, I think it's really important that you anybody goes and tells the government what they think, because when we did research it, we had that was back in September. We had Nick Gibb come and chat with us about the policy and what things that were going on and how things have been going and so on, and bigging up the white paper that's just been dumped. But he didn't really mention grammar schools until we all asked him questions about them. So the Q&A at the end was basically grammar schools related. But then we had at the end of the day the DFE's chief analyst, Tim Lunick, who made a very important point that if you are going to respond to this, then do it professionally and do it with some element of what's the word? The words he used, I'm trying to remember what
Politesse.
Yes, well,
and civility.
Absolutely, be
and
civil.
Insight.
Don't just shout at the government because
and have a good argument.
And hit them with some evidence, the stuff that they can actually use and take into account when thinking of the policy. It's so difficult. I was sat watching Nick Gibb do his speech and do the Q&A, and I asked him a question. Various other people asked him questions, and he just did not seem convinced by this policy. They seemed to me to be totally sideswiped by it. The idea that suddenly selective schools were going to come back in and be essentially, I mean, I'm looking at this page. There's 4 things on this page. It says grammar, new faith schools, independent private schools and universities. Those are the things that are being affected by this new consultation. Do you know what's missing from there?
Go on.
Comprehensives. The schools that we have already, the academies, the free schools that exist already, they don't seem to feature in this, on this page at all.
But I suspect they're going to go for a tripartite system, and also they'll be called something like selective schools as opposed to grammar schools, and entry points will be at sort of different age groups. But that's me. That's, we have
we
to.
We don't know, do we?
No,
it's like Brexit. There's a plan, but we don't know what it is.
But the two people
or is there?
The two people should look at are Becky Allen's research.
Absolutely.
Stuff, and icing on the cake, Jack Marwood's blog, because I really would like to get them in a room with rampant or rabid grammar school
enthusiasts,
proponents,
yeah,
and see what happens, because and actually sort of try and thrash that out as a debate. Maybe people will do that independently. And this is the other thing. I have got a portable audio system which I can take to debates like that and capture
your debate pod
to capture people's information. And I'll talk to you about after the show a bit more, because I think it should be sort of, I don't want it to be London centric, and I've got some plans. Anyway, that's really interesting. Where should we go from here? Are we going to end it, or have you got some more? That's your cuckoo clock going, is it? That's quite good.
It's good, isn't it?
I quite like it.
It's telling me it's
10 o'clock.
It's late.
Yeah. It's 10 o'clock.
Pumpkins. I'm going to turn into a pumpkin. I think we should talk about our rough plans for the podcast. Now that we've had a good old witter, I think we should just end with a coming soon. Without, we have nothing confirmed, really. We have some ideas, but just the sorts of things that we're going to probably concentrate on. We won't talk about who we might have on, because we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot.
No spoilers.
We have some people lined up, some big hitters, hopefully. But I'm just looking down our suggested episode list, and I think it's important that we're talking about all sorts of things. It's not just going to be grammar schools all the time. We want to look at memory and improving retention and learning and things like that. We want to talk about technical here we go, ed tech, there we go, I'll say it right, okay, ed tech, and where's the sweet spot, and where can we use it, and where maybe are there issues. I think, been lots of news about unions this week as well, with two of the unions joining together. We want to talk about people who represent us and so on, and obviously that would probably include the College of Teaching as well, to try and have some of those discussions, and that we've been having on Twitter for quite a few years now about the college, but also about unions as well. That'd be really interesting, as well as SEND and behaviour, and I'm not lumping those two things together, by the way, they just happen to be next to each other, and just generally CPD and all sorts of things. We've got loads of things lined up. That is me reading out a list in a really, really appalling way. There you go. So I think we should stop just about there, Leon. I think it's late. The cuckoo clock is telling me it's time for bed. My kids are probably still up listening to me whitter on. Absolutely.
So can I just say that if people want to find us, we're at theedfiles.co.uk.
Absolutely, and on Twitter we are at the Ed Files, and as I say, we will put loads of these links that we've been talking about today in the show notes. And welcome to our podcast, everybody. I hope you're going to enjoy it over the coming weeks.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
All right, cheers. Bye.